Welcome to the Life After Sugar podcast, the podcast that's not just about sugar, but about your relationship with it and also with food and especially with yourself. So if you want to discover your life after sugar and hear inspiring stories from all kinds of people who also cut out sugar in their way, at their pace, for their own reasons, this is the podcast for you. Because when you take away the sugar, you can finally discover the real sweetness in your life. I'm your host, Netta Gorman. And in this week's episode, I'm talking with Judi, who came from a home as a young girl with a lot of trauma. And she says as she was growing up, there was always a lot of sugar around because her mother baked a lot, and that became Judi's go-to. In fact, Judi readily admits that she used sugar so that she didn't have to deal with the trauma that she was living and her emotions. And it was only once she started working on herself and dropping sugar, much later in life, that Judi started to feel better. We'll get to Judi's story in just a minute. But first, I just wanted to tell you that if you're looking for some free resources, then I have plenty for you. First, download my 5 tips to get rid of cravings. And those 5 tips may not be what you think they are. So go to aftersugarclub.com and download your 5 tips today. Come check out the Life After Sugar Facebook page and subscribe to the Life After Sugar YouTube channel, as well as my Instagram account at MyLifeAfterSugar, which is where you'll get all kinds of inspiration so that you can see that it's perfectly possible to live a happy and active life, even if you don't eat sugar. You can also check out my TikTok account at Netta_LifeAfterSugar. So here's my chat with Judi. All right, so I'm here with Judi today. And Judi, can you tell us a little bit about your childhood, growing up with or without sugar?
Okay. Well, I came from a home as a young girl with a lot of trauma. And also in my day growing up, there was always sugar around. My mother baked a lot, and that was my go-to. A lot of times I went to that instead of food. You got to eat, Judi, you got to eat, that did it for me. But as I started to grow older, I suppose by the time I was even in high school, I'd already knew I didn't belong. I just didn't fit in. I felt so different, like an outcast, not connected with people and not connected with myself, but I didn't know why. Well, then I graduated from high school on my own, getting ready to live life. And wow, the sugar addiction was like unbelievable. And it took me to my eating disorder, and which I had for years. And I thought, that's life, just go about it. But then some real severe depression took over to the point I thought, why am I on this earth? Why is my life like this? What have I done to deserve all this? But I also was a great pretender. I made it look good on the outside. I was a people pleaser, a caretaker, workaholic, People would always, nobody would know. They just thought, oh, look at Judi, look what she's doing. In my work, I would always rise to the top because I was an overachiever. You got to look good, got to make a good presentation. And again, went through some very, very, to the place, the dark depression of not wanting again to be here. And I sought some help for that, did get some help for that. And that was the start of me looking at my emotions, because I had shut my emotions down at 4 years old. Didn't know that again till I started working on myself, but never still found the answer. I mean, I started to feel better. Some of my other addictions went away, but not the sugar. That was there. That was still my go-to. I look back, it was my fix, but the fix never lasted. I had to have more and had to have more.
Mhm.
And then I went through a severe divorce because of also some trauma, went through some cancer because of some trauma, and still kept trying to work on myself. There's got to be something. I just didn't wake up one day and this is what's going on. So I remember just being exhausted and being a spiritual person as I was. I just said, God, what did I do to deserve all this? What are you trying to tell me? Because I'm not getting it, you
Mhm.
know? And I just surrendered. And that evening, when I went to bed, I had a nightmare, truly a nightmare. And I relived my father trying to beat me to death at 4 years old.
Oh.
Well, now pieces came together. No wonder, Judi. No wonder you were scared all the time. No wonder you didn't trust people. You didn't trust yourself. Very, very much of an introvert, someone who kept to themselves. But when I was at work or around people, it was a whole different person. So that was a real insight to me. And from there, I was led to do what I refer to as a soul retrieval.
Mhm.
And what I found out is from that trauma, I had disconnected from parts of myself because parts of my soul couldn't handle the pain. And so having that soul retrieval, wow, changed my life truly forever. I now understood, it made sense why I lived the life I did, why I felt like an outcast, didn't fit in, didn't belong, didn't even fit in with my family, and why I was carrying around so much shame and guilt for what? I didn't, know what. But what I'm really trying to say is it put a lot of pieces to the puzzle together for me that I had tried to work out for years. And so after that soul retrieval, I remember it was just like magical to me. It was like all of a sudden, I felt like I came home.
Mhm.
I belonged. I fit in. I was welcomed. It was like, you're kidding. You're kidding. But what it was, I had connected finally with my soul,
Yeah.
which I had been disconnected from most of my life. And it was such a beyond great feeling that I almost sabotaged it. I thought that this can't be real.
Yeah.
When's the shoe going to drop? I mean, oh my God. So it took me a while to really adjust to that. And the more I worked on myself, the better it became. And I think a lot of people might really relate to this piece. Again, I didn't know it until I went through all of this. I was a person or a child that the only voice I ever listened to was the voice in my head, the ego. That just became normal to me from a little child. But the older I got, I realized it wasn't a positive voice. There's something wrong with you, dude. You're not good enough. Or in
Mhm.
school, you're going to fail. You're a dummy. Go on and on. I remember when I started college, scared to death to start school. And in my first test, psychology, which
Uh-huh.
I loved it, but my mind would say to me, you're going to be done. This is your last class. You're too stupid. Why did you decide to, even try college? And so when I got my first test back, I was just shaking. So I put it on the desk. I thought, I'm not going to look at this. I can't look at it. I'll wait till I get out to my car. So I got out to my car, still shaking. I turned that paper over. I had an A.
Wow.
The voice in my head said to me, you're not stupid, Judi. My dad had told me I was stupid. So
Mm.
that's what had kept me from years from going to college. That was another starting aha of how much I listened to my mind. There was no positive voices in my life. They were all negative. That was my go-to until I started realizing, Judi, you're not your mind. What am I? I didn't trust people. I didn't trust myself. Well, what am I if I'm not my ego or my mind? And then after this soul retrieval, I started to realize I have a soul. That's love. But there was no love in my life. It was hate, hate,
Mhm.
hate, hate. And I was like, wow. So it really took me a while to grasp all of this because like this can't be real. Can I trust this? So it took me a while to trust the voice in my heart instead of the voice in my mind. I
Yeah.
tell you truthfully, I was very much, not knowing it, addicted to my ego. And I
Uh-huh.
suppose if you look back as a little child, where do you go to when you don't trust anybody and you don't trust yourself? So that was my go-to. Now I very, very much, my ego doesn't run my life. But that doesn't come easy for people. I
No.
mean, maybe it does for some. It sure didn't for me. So I had to work, and I think the soul retrieval, the other work that I've done on myself, also helped me realize now when that voice comes, I don't give it any time anymore. I know who I am now. I know
Yeah.
where I come from. So yeah, it's
You
just
have
been
that confidence in
changes.
yourself. How did you, because now, if you don't mind my mentioning it, now you're 78
Sure.
years old,
Uh-huh.
you were telling me. And so you've had time to go through all these processes to get
Yes.
to where you are today.
Hmm.
And how does one go from not trusting the voice inside of your head or inside of your heart to
Hmm.
trusting it, and for that voice to be telling you something different than it's always been telling you? How does that happen?
Well, for me, how it happened, I think a lot of it is when the depression was so bad and I was just really desperate to find an answer. It's like I look out here, I do this, I do that, but I was always searching in all the wrong places. Instead of looking inside myself, which I hadn't touched from a little girl on, I looked to the outside world. Well, if I do enough of this, if I do this, if I do this, if I do this, but I would always come up short. And the mind telling me, why don't you just give it up? What are you looking for anyway? You know? And
Mhm.
then when it really, really started was when maybe in my 30s, when I did my first therapy, the first time in my life, look at my emotions, gave me a panic attack. Because when you put your emotions down from 4 years old, it's like, oh my God, again, the voice that I listened to said, Judi, you're going to die. Why are you
Mm.
doing this? This is stupid. That's what I thought. Yeah, why are you doing this? Back to not trusting people again for a while. But over and over, the more things I worked on, the better it got. But what really, really took me from the ego to the heart is when that day after I saw that picture of my dad, and I just thought, I'm done. Why did you show me this? I don't want to see this. That I had to get over that too. That was some pain to really
I'm sure.
resolve. But from there to doing the soul retrieval, where I brought back those pieces of myself that had been gone, that mind voice or that ego voice wasn't as strong anymore
Mhm.
because I was starting to feel good about myself where I hated myself. I
Mhm.
even wrote a book where it talks about from self hate to self love and no love, zero love for myself. But again, all that connecting and learning to adapt to that and integrate that in that process, I could say, Judi, there's never really been anything wrong with you. It's all because of what happened, and you look into the outside world for your answers. What the world says, they must be right, what the news says, what social media says. Yeah, they've got the answers, but they never filled that void for me.
Yeah.
There was still
Including
that
the
hole.
including the processed foods industry that makes us believe
Oh,
they have the answers.
oh, yeah, sure. I tried, you wouldn't want to know how many diets I was on.
I don't want to
You know,
know. In fact, yes, I do want to know.
I tried every diet that was out there, but I failed. I could do it maybe a week or two, but I needed my sugar.
Mm.
My sugar gave me a high beyond a high. I can look back at that now. But again, that wasn't lasting either. So I was back at it again, back at it again. Well, that really fed my eating disorder, you know? Oh, to the point, truly, my diet was sugar. By that
Mhm.
time, there wasn't anything else. It was sugar. But still, going back to it, because I was still empty, something still missing.
Yeah.
And it was, I mean, I think it was a shock to me when I no longer needed to go to sugar to feel good or to try to numb something out, because there wasn't anything to numb out anymore. I
Yeah.
was whole. I was complete inside. So I didn't have to run to something out there, which for me was sugar, to fill that void that was never lasting anyway. I think if you think of people, even with alcohol addiction or other addictions, they run to this alcohol or drug, but it doesn't last because they haven't dealt with what's really going on the inside. You just look to the outside to fill that void. And I think slowly that's when sugar just had no place in my life anymore. And it was a shock to me, to tell you. I was thinking about this call the other day too at work. And I thought, you know what? I don't need to pick up sugar. When was the last time I had sugar? And when I did, it was maybe a bite of something. I was done. That's a miracle to me.
Yeah,
That's a miracle because
that
that
is.
was my go-to. That's what I
Yeah.
lived on. You know, I can remember when I was still married and we'd go down to my husband's in-laws, you know, for the weekend. And she would always have this big jar of cookies made. This is sharing a secret. By the end of the weekend when we left, I had ate all those cookies. Nobody else had. I had. It was one, that wasn't enough. Had to have another one. Enough. So when we'd sit down to meals, plus the eating disorder, why aren't you eating? I'd pick it a little bit here and there because I'd filled myself with sugar all day. I didn't need to eat, you know?
Yeah. And those
So
were
yeah,
homemade cookies, right?
pardon?
Those were homemade cookies?
Those were homemade cookies, chocolate chip cookies. Oh,
We can't even blame the processed foods industry for that one.
yep, nope. And the processed food, to be honest with you, can make you addicted to sugar too. I can look back now, almost all food, processed food, has sugar in it. There is very little, if you really read the labels, very little out there that doesn't have some sort of sugar in it.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
if you've
true.
got some kind of a issue that you haven't dealt with anyway, it doesn't matter. That little bit of sugar is going to get you your go-to also. Yeah,
Well,
our processed world just thrives on that,
yeah,
you know?
totally. I want to take a quick break to say that if this is your first time here, then welcome and thank you for listening to this podcast. And whether you're new or a regular and you haven't yet rated or reviewed this podcast, could I ask you to scroll down and tap on the stars to rate this podcast and also to write a short review to let me know how this podcast is helping you in your life after sugar. I love reading your reviews. And when you rate and review this podcast, not only does it encourage me to continue making new episodes, but it also helps to share this podcast and have more people see it so that we can help more people feel better and lose weight with less sugar. So again, thank you for rating and reviewing this podcast and for spreading the word about sugar. Were you addicted to other things than sugar?
Oh, yes, very much so. I started as a young girl and nothing against Catholics, but I was brought up Catholic. Now you look back at my story. By the time I was 5 years old, I was telling myself, I have to be perfect because God will never love me and I can't make any mistakes. So that started my perfectionism. Again, a thing from the outside. So I was that. By the time, what was I? Maybe I was 19. And cigarettes, I started smoking. And by the time I was done smoking, I was smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day. Can you imagine? But back then, you could smoke at work. So I'd have a cigarette, a cigarette, a cigarette, a cigarette. I thought I'd never, ever be free from that either. And that's when I met a lady that introduced me to a Bible study. And again, nothing against Catholics, religion. And when she asked me, and my mind said, what are you doing? You are Catholic. You can't go to somebody else's Bible study. Well, I went. And she went to the Bible study. I was pretty nervous. I went in the hallway and walked around the building, and I came across this pastor, and I just peeked on the side and listened to what he had to say. And he said, God has free gifts for you. But that's the only part I heard. I didn't hear all the rest of it. So we left. We were done. We went and had coffee with some of the ladies from the Bible study. And from there, I went home. And the first thing I walked in my door, I remembered, God, you have free gifts, huh? Well, I don't want to smoke anymore. Can you help me? Because I had been trying to quit. I never had another cigarette. I went into the bathroom. I threw up gray bile, threw up, threw up, threw up. I thought, you're getting the flu. I have never had another cigarette.
Wow.
I've never had another craving. Then I knew those were the little signs that had started in my life. This piece, that piece going on, my eating disorder, between the sugar and my eating disorder. Those were the hardest to get rid of. And my mother was a very beautiful, attractive woman. But I was a tomboy, so I was very unattractive to her. So she tried to dress me all the time in these pretty, pretty clothes. So I learned if you're going to look nice, people care for you as I got older. You got to look nice on the outside. Shopping. I was always shopping for the next outfit, for the next set. Well, I'd wear it 2 days later, 3 days later, I didn't like it. See, it didn't fill the void. So great, great shopping addiction also. And the religion. Because of that Catholic upbringing and felt like I was going to hell, I was always searching there too for, where's the answer? Where's the answer? And I can remember in a non-denominational church, one day after I had been very, very sick and had had some surgery, that's part of when my cancer stuff started to come up. I came back to church when I should have been home in bed. My ego saying, well, what are people going to think? You weren't able to get healed. You better get to church. Got to make a good impression, you know? And that day, as I looked around in church, I thought, everybody's doing the same thing. They're trying to fill the void. They're all living from the outside. I couldn't go back to church. It was very sad because I'd also allowed myself to become controlled with that. People pleaser there, rose to the top, but all for the wrong reasons, even in my employment. Yeah, look at Judi, look at Judi. But Judi wasn't fulfilled. Judi wanted to be noticed, loved. But people couldn't do that for me. So yeah, you name my addictions. I've had a lot of them, great deal of them. And like I say, the sugar, the eating disorder were the last to go. Because when I would think about getting rid of my eating disorder, the first thing that would come to me was anger. This is all I have. Why would anybody want me to get rid of my eating disorder? It's mine. Nothing else in my life is mine. My parents didn't love me. I don't love me. So don't ever talk to me about getting rid of my eating disorder.
Yeah.
Well, once I could trust, do the work, I was free of that too. So, like I said, the last one was my sugar.
Yeah.
I don't have addiction anymore.
And you're not addicted anymore. And it's something that I hear quite often. It's more common than we would believe, where people have managed to let go of their alcohol addiction, cigarette addiction, and sugar is very often the last one to go because they feel, or they tell me, if I don't have sugar in my life, I have nothing left, or I feel like I have nothing left. Yeah. And that was the case for you?
I was empty, oh my God. And what was I going to get my energy from when I was living with depression anyway? Oh, that's my fix. You don't realize it at the time. Oh, now I feel good for a while. Oh, that didn't work. Got to have some more. I got to have some more. It was never ending.
Yeah.
But never gave it a thought until it really, really started to become a problem. People were asking me, my family was asking me, we'd go out to eat. I'd make sure ahead of time I had planned for my sugar fix so that when we go out to eat, I could at least eat a salad or something until I remember one day too, sitting down, coming home from work. And at first when I worked with this stuff, I had a great deal of shame around it. I could sit down, here I am, mental health therapist, helping people, addiction counselor, and I've got my own addictions.
Yeah.
Sit down after a stressful day and open up a container of ice cream, and I ate it all.
Mm-hmm.
Never noticed it before. I just ate it all. And I thought, Judi, what's really the problem here? What is really the problem? Oh, scary. I was afraid to look at that. There's a lot of shame behind that, a lot of unresolved stuff there. But over time, the more I looked at stuff, worked on myself, and went inside where I should have gone a long time ago, it was like there was this little girl. You've probably heard of inner child work,
Yes.
maybe. Okay. When I started doing that work and I wanted to touch with my little child, I found her in my basement. She wanted nothing to do with me. She was scared to death. That just hurt my insides like no other. But see, I'd been numbing it out with the sugar and the whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And it took a while for her to come back and trust me. So that was another piece in the healing that also made me realize, Judi, there's a lot of things you just need to face now. Let's get real. It's painful. I'm not going to tell somebody, oh, it's a quick fix to start working on yourself. No, but it's the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my life.
Amazing.
Because now I know who I am.
Yeah.
I know I want life, not what my mind wants, not what my sugar or something else on the outside wants. It's what do I want now?
That is so powerful for people to hear and scary.
It's scary.
Right? Because
But
it
it's
requires
rewarding.
of you what you've shown to have, which is this great courage to actually cope with what's going on emotionally, rather than, because a lot of people say, well, I use sugar to cope. No, you use sugar to numb so that you don't have to cope.
Exactly. Yeah. Sugar, anything else. That's what you're doing. You don't have to face life, but you don't realize at the time because you've been doing it. Or for me, I had been doing it for so many years.
Yeah.
That was just life until it wasn't working anymore. And other things started to fail in my life. It's like slowly but surely I could look at that. I think true, what made it, I know people to this day can say, well, don't you want to have sugar once in a while? I could have it. I don't want it.
Gotcha.
I just don't desire it.
Mm.
Well, that's not the real world. Everybody has sugar once in a while. That's fine. But not everybody lived the life I did. And what it did to me, some people can pick it up and leave it. I couldn't.
Yeah.
Now I just don't care for it. And so, yeah, you can justify it with so many things, but it's all again coming from the outside,
Yes.
of not what you have dealt with on the inside. But I'll be the first to tell anybody the journey is worth it. It really is. If you're suffering and your life has got to the place you're so miserable, you wonder why you're even getting out of bed, or you can't even sleep anymore, the depression, the self-hate, wanting to end my life at a point, you finally get desperate. And that's where I got to. I was desperate. Something's got to change.
Right. And this is what you call soul retrieval?
Yeah, some people call it soul loss, soul retrieval. It's what I did is I went and had I worked with a gentleman who's a shaman, and what he did is he took me back into way when I was a young girl when it all happened, but it also had happened even before then. My mother didn't really want me, so I wasn't connected to my mother in the womb part either. And he did a ceremony to bring all those pieces back to me that were lost so I could feel whole, that I could feel alive and at peace and joy. And that takes a while to adjust to, or it did for me because it was so foreign. But on the other hand, it was like no other. I mean, to this day, to even say to you that I truly love myself, I do. But that was a miracle. It truly was a miracle. When you hate every fiber of your being, but on the outside, you're looking pretty good, but you're pretty numb and hollow inside. So that's what I refer to as a soul retrieval or soul loss, and bring that peace back. You go down into that inner part of you when you were born and when the separation took place, and you call those pieces back, you bring in some healing energy. And it was like, can't explain it unless you go through one. I clicked. Here I am. Judy's right here, right now with you, instead of lost down out there. Before, if I would have probably had this conversation with you, I wouldn't have been able to keep eye contact with you because my mind would have been racing 90 miles an hour saying, is this going okay? Is this working out? When's this over? Because that's just how I lived. I wasn't connected,
It's
you know?
exhausting.
Oh, it was very exhausting, very exhausting.
And, I come across a lot of people who have, let's say, an addictive relationship with sugar. And
Mhm.
not everyone has that trauma in their background,
Exactly.
or, not everyone has like an emotional background that they're using sugar to numb,
Right.
but more people do than we would imagine. So I
Exactly.
know that a lot of the listeners to this podcast will relate to what you're saying and to your experience. And if you had like one piece of advice for someone listening who is just deathly scared of digging deep like you did,
Mhm.
what would that advice be for them?
My advice to them would be to look at the struggle that they're having right now, the fear that they're having, and how long do you want to live that way? Because in truth, you either eventually look at it in honesty or it's going to take your life. Because I was close to it. Yeah, it's scary, but are you worth it? And at times, no, we don't think we are,
Mhm.
but you are worth it. You are worth it and you can do it. And you can have a life you never dreamt you could have, but you can't do it alone. I
Yeah.
couldn't do it alone. You can try, it won't work. You know, that's what I would tell them.
Yeah, that's very powerful and, very empathetic and graceful of you to come and tell your story. Very courageous of you to tell your story, to share it publicly like this. Um, and I think it's going to help a lot of people. So thank
I
you.
hope so. It's not about me. It's about me looking around and also being in this field for so many years. And, people, you can do it. You really can. Why not have the life you really want? But, you got all that shame and all that junk underneath. But when you really have someone that's supporting you and it's walked through it, they help you get through all of that because we all have a life that we deserve to live. We really, really do. And
Ah,
I so appreciate you taking the time to have me on your podcast. I very, very much appreciate it.
very welcome. You're very welcome. And thank you so much for coming and sharing your story. And as I say, I think it's going to help a lot of people. So thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Wow, can you believe that the addiction to sugar can be so strong that it's even more difficult to let go of than addiction to drugs or alcohol or smoking? At least that's how Judi experienced it, and I think it's amazing the journey that Judi's been on and the role that sugar played in her journey. And the key for Judi was getting support so that she didn't feel all alone in her struggle. And if you're at a stage in your life where you're ready to get rid of cravings, but it just seems so overwhelming when you're all alone without support, then my program, the Freedom from Cravings Formula, could be a perfect fit for you. But there's so much confusing and contradictory information out there. How are you supposed to know what's right for you? Well, that's exactly why I created my 90-day program, the Freedom from Cravings Formula. It's a program that's specifically designed for women over 50 who want to get rid of cravings and feel more in control around food, especially sugar and comfort foods. In the program, you'll get step-by-step guidance and customized support through the 5-step formula that I've developed to help you get control over cravings so that you can finally live your life with more energy and fit into your favorite clothes effortlessly and feel confident in your food choices so that you can ditch the shame and embarrassment that you feel every time your emotions make you slip or fall off the wagon, and so that you never feel like you're on some kind of a restrictive diet. If you're at the stage of your life where you're finally ready to look after yourself, let's chat. You can hop on a free clarity call with me at any time by going to aftersugarclub.com and clicking on the big green button, Schedule a Clarity Call. We'll have a quick 30-minute one-on-one chat to see if the Freedom from Cravings Formula 90-day program is a good fit for you. So go to aftersugarclub.com. Speak soon. That's it for this week. Keep in touch and see you soon for another episode.